And welcome to an especially educational edition of Ben's Junk, if only because it says so on today's item. Although this might be a little closer in spirit to the angry video game nerd today. Angry archive nerd, maybe? Who knows? So anyway, this is something I was actually considering making a regular episode on initially, but there's just so little information on it and so little of note in terms of the games and stuff on this. Yeah, it's a console. That I think this is going to be much better served by a Ben's Junk. So anyway, this is the Socrates Educational Video System, and according to Wikipedia, and you're going to hear that a lot today, this was introduced in 1988 and discontinued probably around 1991, I would guess. And that's part of the problem on why I couldn't do a normal episode on this. All the information was Wikipedia, and it's mostly uncited. But anyway, this is one of those many late 80s pseudo-educational electronic toys that seemed to be such a thing back then. But from the looks of this, you'd go, oh, this is for maybe a 4-year-old or something. No, this was actually intended for 7, 8 years old and up. But you'd never really know that looking at it. And then on top of that, by 1988, you could buy an NES for under $100. This, according to Wikipedia, was $130. So, yeah. And I paid the princely sum of $2.99 for this, and I still might have overpaid. But anyway, let's get into this thing. So, this was yet another one of my fixer-uppers, and whoever owned this initially, I have this sinking feeling they played it once or twice and it went in the closet. And this is one of those educational toys, electronic ones, that was mostly battery operated. I mean, you could get an AC adapter for this, but I think most people just did batteries. And the original batteries were still in there. And the batteries had an expiration date, I believe, of 1991 on them. So I'd be willing to bet those batteries had probably been in there since the late 80s. And they had exploded. And there was just... I've never seen so much dried battery acid in my life. And I did my best to clean this out, but it just never entirely happened. I threw everything I had at it, like a baking soda and water solution and alcohol and contact cleaner. And just, I was never able to get this thing operational again as far as batteries go for the main console. I was able to get it functional again for the controller because this is actually a remote. I know. Just a little behind the times here. You'd expect something like this for something from maybe the early 80s, albeit it probably still would have been wired. But no, this is it. You've got a keyboard and 2 controllers, very basic and very unresponsive controllers. They're not accurate at all. And they're on leashes. So imagine 2 kids trying to play some crap educational game with this thing and only having maybe 6 inches or so of leash on it. Yeah, not good. So anyway, I was able to get this thing working again, but it was kind of a long road. And initially when I was still trying to clean out the battery acid, well, let me turn this around. So you'd think that you could unscrew this and you could access the full battery compartment because it's 6D batteries that would go in there. And nope, it's encased within its own encasing, if that makes sense. And I wasn't able to get down there. And the batteries were so dried on and hardened that I just had to sit there and pry at it for way too long. I spent an entire evening just trying to get the batteries out of this stupid thing. And then everything inside is so cheap and so god-awful, just garbage plastic that just when I would turn it over and, maybe try and just gently tap it against the inside of the trash can to get some of the loose battery acid out, it knocked out the posts that hold in the power switch, and I wasn't able to glue it back on or anything. So what I did was I just took the whole switch mechanism and I taped it as hard as I could from the inside going out of the between the two halves. But at least I can turn it on and off. And yes, this is a kind of a Commodore 64 sort of cartridge setup. And then this blue thing was weird. I thought maybe this had some sort of purpose. Nope. It's not a light, nothing. It's just design. But it's, at least when this is apart, it's removable. I don't know what the deal was with that. Maybe they had other colors or something. But I can't seem to figure out the logic. It serves no purpose. It's just an empty plastic cartridge. No lights, no nothing. And for people that like blinky lights and stuff, you'd be disappointed. The remote sensor blinks, and then the controller, when you hit a button, you'd see this tiny little light come on, and that's it. But you know, what matters is the games, and the games are just really boring. And to add insult to injury, the load times are just awful. I mean, even by the standards of the time, they are just unacceptably bad. They make the Commodore stuff look pretty good. And I guess that's just one more piece of this puzzle. There was one kind of notable, kind of cool thing about this. Built in to the console is a few games. They're not of any note, but they're built in, so you don't even have to have cartridges. But, you know, you'd be missing out on real classics like State to State or Around the World. And those are two of the three cartridges I have. This first one was actually left behind in the machine by the previous owner, and it was all jammed in there and screwed up, but I was able to just use very liberal doses of alcohol and just do the kind of ghetto cleaning where you're just soaking it in alcohol, the rum in here, and just taking the thing in and out of the machine a whole bunch of times, and I was able to eventually get it to work. And also on the working front, I found that the plug on here, it's just a standard plug like you see on a lot of AC adapters. And it just so happens that the specs are written on the back. And as it turned out, one of the AC adapters for one of my external computer hard drives was close enough to the specs on here that I just plugged it in and hey, it worked. And aside from that, this is kind of like the Interactive Vision, the ViewMaster Interactive Vision, in that you have to have two cables for this. You have one going in and one out. And, two-way communication. So, otherwise, there isn't much to say about this, technically. I do have one more game that I'm never going to open just because I'm an anal collector sort. And with my luck, this is probably actually a decent one. Hodgepodge, and still sealed, and it was $1.99. But anyway, that's really about all there is to say about the console itself. So I guess I'll just finish out this Ben's junk with a little bit of gameplay footage, and it's not exactly the most exciting work I've ever done. But otherwise, that is it for today's Ben's junk, and I'll see you again soon.